Hi, guys. Welcome to Heart-Pounding Tales of Betrayal, Justice, and Revenge. Now let's begin.
At Atlanta Airport with my son and daughter-in-law, ready for our family trip to Italy, a federal agent suddenly grabbed my arm. "Pretend I'm arresting you and stay quiet," he whispered urgently. I was stunned. His face was pale with shock. 15 minutes later, I sat in a sterile FBI office as he pulled up surveillance footage on a monitor. What I saw made me realize my life was in immediate danger. Comment below where you're watching this from and what time it is right now. Because at 7 a.m. in Atlanta Airport, I thought I was just starting a family vacation. I had no idea I was walking into a trap. My name is Gideon Sullivan, and at 55, I thought I had life figured out. I'd built 3 successful companies from the ground up, survived 2 recessions, and accumulated enough wealth to secure my family's future for generations. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for losing Linda. 6 months ago, cancer took my wife of 28 years. The doctors gave us 6 months to fight it. She lasted 4. Her final words still echo in my mind. "Promise me you'll fix things with the kids, Gideon. Don't let work be your whole world anymore." That promise brought me to Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport on this crisp October morning, standing in the security line with my son Tobias and his wife Brittany. At 30, Tobias had inherited his mother's gentle eyes, but lacked her intuitive wisdom. Brittany, 28, was everything Linda had worried about. Beautiful, charming, and just a little too interested in our family's financial portfolio. "Dad, you sure you're ready for this?" Tobias asked, adjusting his carry-on bag. 2 weeks in Italy is a long time away from the office. I smiled, remembering how Linda used to roll her eyes when I'd check emails during family dinners. "Your mother always wanted to see Florence. Figured it was time I honored that dream, even if she can't be there with us." Brittany squeezed my arm with practiced sympathy. "She's watching over us, Richard. This trip is going to be exactly what we all need." The irony of those words would haunt me later. We'd planned everything meticulously: first-class flights, a luxury hotel overlooking the Arno River, private tours of the Uffizi Gallery. I'd spared no expense. After decades of putting business before family, this was my chance to be the father and grandfather Linda had begged me to become. Next, the TSA agent waved me forward. I handed over my boarding pass and driver's license, the same routine I'd performed hundreds of times during business trips. But as the federal agent examined my documents, his expression changed. His eyes met mine with an intensity that made my stomach drop. "Act like I'm arresting you and keep quiet," he whispered urgently, his voice barely audible above the airport chaos. I was stunned. The bustling sounds of travelers faded into silence. It was just him and me, his steel-gray eyes locked on mine with an intensity that screamed danger. "What?" I managed to whisper back. "Don't turn around. Don't make any gestures. Your life depends on it." His voice was barely audible, but every word cut through me like glass. "Come with me as if I were arresting you. Trust me." Behind me, I heard Tobias's concerned voice. "Dad, what's happening?" The agent stepped around the counter, his hand firmly but gently guiding my elbow. "Sir, I need you to come with me for additional screening. Just a routine procedure." My legs felt like concrete as I followed him, my mind racing. In 30 years of business, I'd developed instincts for danger, for deception, for the moment when everything changes. Those instincts were screaming now. "Is there a problem, officer?" Brittany's voice carried the perfect note of concerned daughter-in-law. "Nothing to worry about, ma'am. Please wait in the boarding area. We'll have Mr. Sullivan back to you shortly." As we walked away from the security checkpoint, I caught a glimpse of my son and daughter-in-law. They stood there looking worried, the picture of a loving family concerned for their patriarch. If I hadn't heard the agent's warning, I would have believed that concern was genuine. 15 minutes later, I found myself in a windowless FBI office, still trying to process what I'd just learned about my own son. Agent Matthew Stone closed the door behind us. 2 metal chairs faced a wall-mounted monitor in the windowless FBI office. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm going to show you something difficult to watch," Stone said. The screen flickered to life, showing security footage from the check-in area. There we were, looking like any other family heading on vacation. "Watch your son's hands," Stone instructed. I leaned forward as the timestamp showed, 7:23 a.m. Tobias reached into Brittany's purse and pulled out a small vial. My stomach turned as I watched my son unscrew the cap of my water bottle. The contents disappeared into my drink in seconds. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. Stone paused the video. "Lab analysis suggests it's a fast-acting sedative. In that concentration, it would have caused cardiac arrest within 3 hours. I gripped the table, remembering Linda's voice from 18 months ago during dinner. That girl spent more on handbags last month than most families make in a year, Linda had said. And the way she looks at our financial statements, it's like she's taking inventory. You're being paranoid, I'd replied, not looking up from my phone. Linda had fixed me with that look. Gideon, I know the difference between curiosity and calculation. That woman is planning something, and our son is too blinded to see it. I should have listened. Stone continued the video. After Tobias capped the bottle, he turned to Brittany. The audio was faint, but their lips were clearly visible. It's done, Tobias whispered, his face pale. Brittany squeezed his arm. Remember, we're doing this for us? Those people won't wait much longer. What if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong. By tonight we'll be free, and your father will finally be at peace with your mother. Stone stopped the recording. We're still investigating their full motives, but it's clear this wasn't spur of the moment. My son hadn't just tried to kill me in desperation. This had been calculated, planned, discussed between them. Mr. Sullivan, we can arrest them right now. We have enough for attempted murder charges. But their lawyers will argue the evidence is circumstantial that someone else could have tampered with your bottle. Rich kids with good attorneys have walked away from worse. I stared at the frozen screen showing my son's guilty face. What's the alternative? You continue with your trip. We'll have agents monitoring every move. Let them try again, and we'll have ironclad evidence no jury could ignore. Outside this room, normal people were catching flights to visit family, to live lives where their children didn't plot their murder. They mentioned those people, I said quietly. Who are they afraid of? Stone's expression darkened. We're still investigating that angle, but it suggests they're under pressure from someone who doesn't negotiate. I thought about Linda's final words about fixing things with my kids. This wasn't what she'd meant, but it was the hand I'd been dealt. Agent Stone, I said finally, set up your surveillance. I'm going to Italy. He nodded grimly. We'll wire you with a tracking device and emergency beacon. Agent Diana Wilson will be on your flight, and we'll have local support in Florence. And if they succeed before you can stop them, Stone met my eyes. They won't, but what you're about to do takes incredible courage. My wife always said I was too stubborn for my own good. 1 hour later, I walked back toward the boarding gate, equipped with surveillance devices and a dangerous plan that would either give me justice or get me killed. The boarding announcement echoed through Terminal F as passengers lined up for Delta Flight 58 to Florence. I clutched my boarding pass, the surveillance device hidden beneath my shirt, feeling heavier than it actually was. Dad, you look pale, Tobias said, approaching with our bags. You sure you're feeling okay? The concern in his voice would have touched me an hour ago. Now it sounded like a predator, checking if his prey was weakening. Just tired, I replied, forcing a smile. Brittany linked her arm through mine. Don't worry, Gideon. Once we're in the air, you can relax. Maybe have a drink. We settled into first class. Me by the window, Tobias in the middle, Brittany on the aisle. Can I get you anything to drink? The flight attendant asked. Water for my father, Tobias said quickly. I watched him carefully. Was he disappointed I hadn't drunk from the poisoned bottle yet? Actually, I'll have coffee. Black. A flash of frustration crossed Tobias's face. Dad, caffeine isn't good for you. You should stick to water. I'm fine, son. As we taxied down the runway, I studied my son's profile. When had he learned to lie so smoothly? So, Dad, Tobias said once airborne, with Mom gone, you're carrying a huge burden running all 3 companies alone. Here it was, Plan B. I've managed fine for 30 years. But you don't have to manage alone anymore. Brittany chimed in. Tobias has an MBA from Wharton. He knows the business. Tobias leaned forward. What if we started transitioning some responsibilities? You could sign over operational control of the Atlanta division. I pretended to consider this. That's a big step. You'd still own everything. But having my name on operational documents would streamline things. And if something happened to you, God forbid, there wouldn't be legal complications. The casual way he said, if something happened to you, made my skin crawl. We could also look at real estate holdings, Brittany added. Transfer some properties into Tobias's name, for tax purposes. They wanted seamless asset transition when I died, which they expected within hours. Let me think about it, I said, closing my eyes and pretending to nap. 3 hours in, Tobias tried again. Dad, about that water. I'm fine with coffee. But you haven't had water since Atlanta. You could get dehydrated. The persistence was almost comical. My son desperately trying to convince me to drink his poison. I'll drink when I'm thirsty. I caught Brittany checking her phone, typing quickly. updating those mysterious people who wouldn't wait. Halfway through the flight, I spotted Agent Diana Wilson 3 rows behind us. She gave me an imperceptible nod. When I returned from the restroom, Tobias held a fresh water bottle. "The flight attendant brought this for you." I looked at the bottle. The seal appeared intact, but I knew better. "Thanks, but I'm still working on my coffee." The disappointment in his eyes was unmistakable. As hours dragged on, Brittany grew more agitated, checking her watch constantly. Whatever timeline they operated on, I wasn't cooperating. "Gideon," she said during meal service, "you've barely touched your food. Are you feeling all right?" "Just not hungry." "You should eat something. Keep your strength up." The fake concern was insulting. 7 hours and Tobias made one final attempt. "Dad, when we get back to Atlanta, maybe we could meet with lawyers about the business transition?" "Maybe," I said noncommittally. I saw him exchange a look with Brittany. They were running out of time and options. 9 hours later, as the plane touched down in Florence, I felt relief and dread. I'd survived the flight, but the real test was just beginning. Florence spread before us like a Renaissance painting come to life. The terracotta rooftops gleamed in the afternoon sun, and the Arno River wound through the city like a silver ribbon. Under different circumstances, I would have been mesmerized by the beauty. Instead, I was calculating survival odds. Our taxi wound through narrow streets past the Duomo. Tobias and Brittany pressed against the windows like excited tourists. "Look at that, Dad!" Tobias exclaimed, gesturing toward the Ponte Vecchio. "Mom would have loved this." The mention of Linda felt like a knife twist. He was using her memory to manipulate me. "She would have," I agreed quietly. The Hotel Davanzati sat in the heart of the historic district. As we arrived, a distinguished man in a tailored suit approached. "Mr. Sullivan, welcome to Florence. I'm Gregory, the hotel manager." He shook my hand with a grip that lingered just long enough to slip a small device into my palm. "If there's anything you need," he said with emphasis, "contact me directly." Gregory was my FBI lifeline. Our suite overlooked the Arno. Tobias immediately started planning our itinerary. "We should hit the Uffizi tomorrow," he said, spreading brochures across the table. "Then the Accademia, to see David." We spent the afternoon wandering Florence's historic center. The Piazza della Signoria bustled with tourists. Brittany bought a silk scarf. Tobias took photos, playing the devoted son, documenting our family vacation. The performance was flawless. "You know what would be amazing," Tobias said as we sat at a cafe overlooking the Duomo. "A day trip to the Tuscan countryside. These incredible hilltop villages completely off the beaten path." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Here it was set up for attempt number 2. "That sounds lovely," Brittany added, "but maybe too much driving for Gideon. Those mountain roads can be winding." The fake concern was masterful. I can handle a little driving," I said. "Where did you have in mind?" Tobias showed me photos of rolling hills dotted with cypress trees. "There's this amazing lookout point about an hour outside the city. Incredible views, perfect for photos. Very secluded." "Secluded, of course. We could rent a car," he continued. "Just the 3 of us, like a real family adventure." "I think that's a wonderful idea," I said, meaning every word. That evening, as Tobias and Brittany went out for dinner, Gregory appeared at my door. "The local carabinieri are coordinated," he said. "Agent Wilson is 2 floors below. We've positioned surveillance at the location your son researched." He handed me an emergency beacon. "Press this twice if you're in danger. Response time under 5 minutes. And if they succeed first?" Gregory's expression was grim. "They won't. One more thing, we've identified their financial pressure. Loan sharks connected to organized crime in Miami. Your son owes $650,000. So Tobias wasn't just greedy, he was desperate. "How long do they have?" "Based on intercepted communications, maybe 2 weeks." No wonder they were pushing so hard. After Gregory left, I stood on my balcony overlooking the Arno. Florence glittered below a city that had witnessed centuries of human drama. Tomorrow it would witness one more family tragedy. I thought about Linda's final words about fixing things with our children. She'd meant healing forgiveness. Instead, I was about to watch our son reveal himself as a killer. But maybe knowing the truth, however painful, was better than living a lie. The next morning we set off for the Tuscan hills, where the most beautiful landscape in Italy would witness the ugliest betrayal of my life. The Tuscan countryside unfolded before us like a postcard from paradise. Rolling hills covered in olive groves stretched to the horizon, punctuated by ancient stone farmhouses and cypress trees. The morning sun cast everything in golden light. Tobias drove our rental Mercedes with steady confidence. Brittany sat in the passenger seat, pointing out picturesque villages on distant hilltops. "This is incredible, Dad," Tobias said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. Mom always dreamed of seeing Tuscany. Every mention of Linda felt calculated now. "She would have loved it," I replied, my hand touching the emergency beacon in my pocket. We drove for an hour through winding roads, passing vineyards where workers harvested grapes. The beauty was breathtaking, but I felt like I was being driven to my execution. "There it is," Tobias announced, pulling into a gravel parking area. "The lookout point." Before us stretched a panoramic vista of Tuscan hills. A stone wall marked the edge beyond which the ground dropped away into a steep ravine. "Perfect spot for photos," Brittany said, pulling out her phone. I looked down. The drop was easily 200 feet onto jagged rocks. A fall would be instantly fatal. "Dad, come stand here," Tobias called, positioning himself near the wall. "The light is perfect." Every instinct screamed danger, but I walked over. If this was happening, I needed it where the FBI could see. "A little closer to the edge?" Brittany directed, raising her phone. "The background will be amazing." I stepped closer, my heels now inches from the drop. The wind carried the scent of wild herbs and distant church bells. "Perfect. Now put your arm around Tobias." My son stepped beside me, his hand resting on my shoulder. To anyone watching, it looked like a touching father-son moment. "Smile, Gideon," Brittany called. But I was watching Tobias's face, seeing the internal struggle. His hand trembled slightly. "This is for the best, Dad," he whispered. "You've been so sad since Mom died. Maybe it's time for you to be with her." His hand pressed firmer against my back. "Tobias," I said quietly, "your mother would be heartbroken if she could see what you've become." Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt pain, maybe the boy I'd once known. "I'm sorry," he whispered. His hand tensed, preparing to push. In that moment, I felt strangely calm. If this was how it ended, at least I'd know the truth about my son. But instead of the push, I heard car doors slamming. "Polizia, nobody move." 3 Italian police officers appeared from behind our car, weapons drawn. Behind them, Agent Diana Wilson emerged from a second vehicle, her FBI badge visible. Tobias's hand jerked away as if burned. His face went white. "Mr. Sullivan, please step away from the wall," one officer called in accented English. I walked slowly toward the police, legs unsteady. Behind me, Brittany's voice was high and panicked. "What's going on? We're just tourists." But Tobias said nothing. He stood frozen, staring at the officers with the expression of a man whose world had collapsed. Agent Wilson approached me. "Are you injured?" "No, but another few seconds." She nodded grimly. "We saw everything. Your son was clearly preparing to push you." I turned to look at Tobias, now being handcuffed. He met my eyes across the distance, and I saw something unexpected relief. Maybe deep down he'd wanted to be stopped. That evening, back in our hotel suite, it was time to drop all pretenses and face the truth. The Florence skyline glittered outside our hotel windows as I sat across from my son and daughter-in-law in our suite's sitting area. The Italian police had released them after Agent Wilson explained that we needed a full confession to ensure conviction. Now, in the privacy of our room, the masks could finally come off. Tobias sat hunched forward, his hands clasped tightly together. Brittany perched on the edge of her chair, her usual poise replaced by nervous energy. They both looked like defendants waiting for a verdict, which I suppose they were. "I know everything," I said, simply breaking the silence that had stretched between us since we'd returned from the police station. Tobias's head snapped up. "Dad, I can explain." "Can you—" I interrupted. "Can you explain why you put poison in my water bottle at Atlanta airport? Can you explain why you just tried to push me off a cliff?" The color drained from his face. "How did you—" "The FBI has been watching you since the moment you tampered with my drink. Every whispered conversation, every desperate plan, every lie you've told me, they have it all on record." Brittany finally spoke, her voice shaky. "Gideon, you have to understand. We never wanted to hurt you. We were just so desperate. Desperate enough to murder me for my money." "It wasn't supposed to be murder," Tobias burst out. "The sedative was just supposed to make you sick, maybe have a heart episode. We thought if you were hospitalized, if the doctors said you needed to reduce stress, you might consider transferring some assets to me." I stared at my son, this stranger wearing my child's face. "The lab analysis showed the dose would have killed me, Tobias. On that plane, 30,000 feet in the air with no medical help available." His shoulders began to shake. I know, and I've been sick about it ever since." But Brittany said, "Don't you dare blame this on me." Brittany snapped, her composure finally cracking. You're the one who owes $650,000 to people who break legs for late payments. Both of you owe that money, I corrected. I've seen the financial records. The luxury cars, the designer clothes, the cryptocurrency investments that went south. You've been living like millionaires on borrowed money for 2 years. Tobias buried his face in his hands. We thought the crypto would pay off. We thought we could make enough to cover everything and still have money left over. When it crashed, you decided it was easier to kill me than face the consequences of your choices. We didn't know what else to do, Brittany said, tears streaming down her face. These aren't normal creditors, Gideon. They're dangerous people. They know where we live, where we work. They've made it clear what happens to people who don't pay. So you made it clear what happens to fathers who trust their children. The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Tobias looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Dad, please. I know what we did was unforgivable, but we're family. You're all I have left now that Mom is gone. Your mother saw this coming, I said quietly. She warned me about Brittany's interest in our finances. She told me that girl was calculating, not curious. I should have listened. Linda never understood me, Brittany protested weakly. Linda understood you perfectly. She saw through your act from day one. The only person who couldn't see it was me because I wanted to believe my son had found love instead of a con artist. Tobias flinched as if I'd slapped him. Brittany isn't a con artist. She loves me. Does she love what marrying you was supposed to get her? I turned to Brittany. Tell him the truth. If I were a janitor instead of a businessman, would you have given Tobias a second glance? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to form the lie. That's what I thought. Please, Tobias whispered, sliding off his chair to kneel on the floor in front of me. Please, Dad, I know I messed up. I know I made terrible choices. But I'm still your son. I'm still the boy you taught to ride a bike, the kid you helped with homework, the young man you walked down the aisle at his wedding. Are you? I asked. Because that boy would never have tried to murder his father. That boy would have come to me when he was in trouble and asked for help. I was ashamed, he sobbed. I was so ashamed of what we'd done, of how much we owed. I couldn't bear the thought of disappointing you again. So instead you decided to kill me. We were desperate. We didn't think clearly. Please, Dad, there has to be something we can do to fix this. I looked down at my son kneeling on the hotel room floor, begging for forgiveness he didn't deserve. I thought about Linda, about her final words, about the promise I'd made to take care of our children. But taking care of someone doesn't always mean giving them what they want. I stood up from the sofa and walked to the window, looking out at Florence's ancient streets, where countless families had faced their own moments of truth. The lights of Florence twinkled below like fallen stars as I contemplated the most important decision of my life. Behind me, my son knelt on the marble floor, his wife beside him, both waiting for my verdict, like condemned prisoners. Linda's voice echoed in my memory. Promise me you'll take care of our children. I'd made that promise with tears in my eyes, never imagining it would lead to this moment. Stand up, I said without turning around. I heard them scramble to their feet, hope creeping into their voices. Dad, Tobias whispered. I turned to face them, my decision crystallizing with each word. I'm going to give you exactly what you deserve. Relief flooded their faces. I will transfer $650,000 to pay off your debts. I continued. Every penny you owe to those dangerous people will be cleared. Thank you, Brittany gasped. Thank you so much, Gideon. We'll never... I'm not finished. My voice cut through her gratitude like ice. I'm paying your debts because I don't want you tortured or killed by loan sharks. That's the mercy your mother would have wanted me to show. Tobias stepped forward eagerly. We understand, Dad. We'll pay you back, I swear. We'll work for the rest of our lives. But mercy doesn't mean there are no consequences. I walked to the hotel phone and picked up the receiver. Agent Wilson. Yes, please, come up now. Bring the handcuffs. The color drained from both their faces. What are you doing? Brittany shrieked. I'm calling the FBI, I said calmly, hanging up the phone. You're both going to prison for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. But you said you'd help us? Tobias pleaded. I am helping you. I'm saving your lives by paying your debts. But I'm also ensuring you face the legal consequences of trying to murder me. Twice. Dad, please. Your mother made me promise to take care of you. I interrupted. This is how I take care of you. By making sure you learn that actions have consequences, that family doesn't mean you can commit murder without punishment. A knock came at the door. I opened it to find Agent Wilson and 2 Italian police officers. Mr. Sullivan, she said formally, are you ready to proceed? I am. She entered with the officers, their handcuffs gleaming under the hotel room lights. Tobias Sullivan and Brittany Sullivan, Agent Wilson announced, you are under arrest for attempted murder conspiracy to commit murder and assault with intent to kill. This isn't happening, Brittany whispered as the officer approached her with handcuffs. This can't be happening. You have the right to remain silent. The officer continued in accented English. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Tobias looked at me with desperate eyes as his hands were cuffed behind his back. Dad, I'm your son, your only son. You stopped being my son the moment you decided I was worth more dead than alive, I replied. The boy I raised would have come to me for help. The man you've become tried to kill me for money. But the debts you said you'd pay them, I will. Tonight, every dollar will be transferred to clear your obligations. But that doesn't erase what you've done to me, to our family, to your mother's memory. As they were led toward the door, Brittany turned back to me with venom in her eyes. You're a cruel old man. We could have been a family. We were never a family, I said quietly. We were a target and two predators. Tobias said nothing as they escorted him out, but I saw tears streaming down his face. Whether they were tears of remorse or just self-pity, I'd never know. Agent Wilson lingered after the Italian police left with their prisoners. That was the right decision, Mr. Sullivan, she said. Most people would have chosen one or the other, mercy or justice. You chose both. My wife always said the hardest choices are the right ones. The money transfer will be completed within the hour. I keep my promises even to people who tried to kill me. She nodded approvingly. They'll be extradited to the United States within the week. With the evidence we have, they're looking at 15 to 20 years each. After she left, I stood alone in the hotel suite, surrounded by the silence that follows the end of a storm. Florence continued to glitter outside my window, indifferent to the human drama that had just concluded within these walls. I thought about Linda, about whether she would approve of what I'd done. I'd kept my promise to take care of our children, just not in the way either of us had expected. 6 months later, I sat in my Atlanta home reading the newspaper headline that would close this chapter of my life forever. Father and son conspiracy trial ends in conviction. The headline stared back at me from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution as I sipped my morning coffee. 6 months had passed since Florence and justice had finally spoken. Tobias Sullivan, 15 years in federal prison. Brittany Sullivan, 18 years for being the mastermind. The sentences were everything Agent Wilson had predicted. The evidence had been overwhelming video footage, financial records, recorded confessions. Their expensive attorneys couldn't argue with surveillance footage of attempted murder. Grandpa, are you reading the scary news again? 7-year-old Emma Stephanie's daughter climbed onto my lap. Her brother Jake, 9, was building with Legos on the floor. Not scary news, sweetheart, just old news. Stephanie appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand. At 32, she had her mother's wisdom, and my business sense the best of both Linda and me. The trial coverage finally finished, she asked. Looks like it. The reporters have moved on. She settled into Linda's old reading chair. How are you feeling about it all? Relieved, I answered honestly. Justice was served. The people who tried to kill me are in prison. And sad, I looked down at Emma, now coloring. Yes, sad that it came to this. Sad that your mother was right about Brittany. Sad that I lost a son. You didn't lose a son, Grandpa, Jake called out. You gained a grandson who actually likes you. Stephanie and I both laughed. Kids cut through complexity with brutal honesty. Speaking of family, Stephanie said, I've been thinking about Mom's birthday next month. Maybe we could visit her grave together. Linda would have been 53. The idea of facing it with real family people who loved me instead of calculating my net worth felt right. I'd like that. My phone buzzed with an email from Georgia Department of Corrections. Tobias wanted to send me a letter. What will you do? Stephanie noticed my expression. I don't know yet. That evening, after Stephanie and the kids left, I sat in my study with the new will. Stephanie would inherit the majority. The grandchildren had college funds. A substantial portion would go to charities Linda had supported. Tobias would receive a trust fund, but only after serving his sentence and completing psychological counseling. If he could prove he'd changed, he'd have enough money to start over. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was hope. I opened the prison email. Dad, it began. I know I have no right to contact you. I know what I did was unforgivable, but not a day passes without me regretting every choice that led to Florence. Prison has given me time to think. I've started therapy. I'm learning about financial desperation, about how people rationalize terrible choices. None of it excuses what I did, but it helps me understand how I became someone capable of planning your murder. I miss Mom every day. I know she would be ashamed of what I became, but I think she might be proud of who I'm trying to become now. I don't expect forgiveness, but if someday, years from now, you think there might be room for a son who's truly sorry, I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of that chance. Your son, if I'm still allowed to call myself that, Tobias. I read the letter 3 times. Outside my window, Atlanta glittered in the distance. Somewhere in this city, Stephanie was tucking my grandchildren into bed, teaching them right from wrong. Maybe that's what family really is. Not the people who share your blood, but the people who share your values. The people who would never hurt you, who celebrate your successes and support you through failures. I'd lost a son, but I'd gained something more precious, the knowledge of who truly loved me. And maybe someday I'd gain a son back too. Looking back at this true story, I realize I made a crucial mistake that nearly cost me my life. Don't be like me. Don't ignore the warning signs when someone you love shows their true nature. Linda tried to tell me about Brittany's calculating behavior, but I was too stubborn to listen. This true story taught me that real family isn't defined by blood, but by love and loyalty. My grandchildren showed me more genuine affection in 6 months than my son did in 30 years. That's why I share these grandpa stories, to help others recognize the difference between people who truly care and those who see you as a paycheck. God gave me a second chance when that FBI agent saved my life at the airport. God also blessed me with Stephanie and her children, who became my real family. And I believe God allowed Tobias to write that letter from prison, because even the most broken relationships can find redemption through genuine repentance. The hardest lesson from this true story: sometimes protecting yourself means letting go of people you've loved your whole life. But it also means opening your heart to those who truly deserve your trust. These grandpa stories aren't just entertainment, they're warnings wrapped in hope. Through all these grandpa stories I've shared, I've learned that if my experience helps even one person recognize toxic family members before it's too late, then sharing this painful chapter was worth it. What's your story? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-preservation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that matter.